So I just finished playing Resident Evil Village, and I must say, I really didn't enjoy myself. Now, my personal history with Resident Evil is kind of an interesting one. I was never really into the horror genre while I was growing up. I got horrified by horror movies and video games and stuff like that. But a few years ago, one of my mates bought Resident Evil 7, and I said to myself, no more of this pussy shit. I'm gonna play this game from start to finish with the doors closed and the lights out. And to this day, Resident Evil 7 remains to be one of my favorite games of all time, simply because it was instrumental in me overcoming my fears. But it also just so happens to be a damn decent game on its own. The claustrophobic atmosphere of the Baker Mansion is not to be understated. From the breaking down walls to the decomposing animals, to its narrow corridors, and let's not forget, the Bakers themselves. Jack Baker is my favorite part of this entire game.
Welcome to the family, son.
He is completely unstoppable and will deal serious amounts of damage to you if you let him catch up to you. Oh, and one thing, he doesn't fuck off. For a large majority of this game, he is relentlessly pursuing you, and you know it's only a matter of time before he catches up to you. It taught you to be wise with your time management, because if you let your guard down at the wrong time, you're fucked. About a year after Resident Evil 7 came out, Capcom decided to remake the Resident Evil 2 game. Resident Evil 2. Words cannot describe how great this game is, and I'll happily gush about it in my own video. But a year after they released Resident Evil 2, they decided to remake Resident Evil 3.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
A game that relied too heavily on open areas and an increased focus on action, and that's to the game's detriment. Showering the player in ammo and a wide variety of guns makes for a less horrific gaming experience. And finally, Capcom has released Resident Evil Village, a game that relies heavily on open areas and an increased focus on action. Now, I will say that this game isn't nearly as bad as Resident Evil 3, but it's really not much better. In saying that, there are positives that have come out of this game, but the list isn't extensive. To start, I like the gameplay. This game has the same gameplay as pretty much any Resident Evil game these days. But like Resident Evil 7, it's in first person, making the experience more personal. So when something happens, like when Ethan gets his hand fucking bitten off, it's more horrific because it makes it feel like your hand has been bitten off. The player is able to put themselves in the character's shoes, and it gives them the feeling of, what would I do in this situation? And that gives the atmosphere more depth. Which brings me to my next point. The atmosphere in this game is foreboding and brilliantly handled. For the most part. The village and the areas in which you explore are dark and ominous. Whenever I entered a new building, I was met with the feeling of, what the fuck am I getting into? And this was especially good in the castle area and the dollhouse. The dollhouse is a standout for me, mainly because it forces you into a Saw-like scenario where you have no weapons, you have to work your way out on your own. I just wish that the rest of the game was more like this area, particularly with the monster that eventually comes out and tries to kill you. When this motherfucker poked his head around the corner for the first time, I fucking shit my pants. I loved how this creature made me feel. I didn't know what it was or what it was capable of, and I'm quite sure I didn't want to find out. It kind of brought me back to the feeling that Mr. X gave me in Resident Evil 2. When he was chasing you, you didn't know what it was capable of, what it wanted, and you were most certain that you really didn't want to find out. And the castle area, with Big Bitch and her gorgeous daughters, were more reminiscent of other Resident Evil games, that I kinda wish the whole game was like. Both the areas that I liked in this game, the castle area and the dollhouse, I just wish that this game had taken either of these areas and focused on either of them. Because every other area in this game isn't as interesting as either of these areas. And that brings me to my first real negative of this game. The game is really devoid of tension. And that is mainly due to the villains of this game. None of these villains filled me with dread, nor did they pose any kind of threat to me. Let's take Big Bitch for example. Something that's this attractive isn't going to threaten me. And her lines are extremely seductive. I mean, just listen to this.
Now, let's take a look at him. Wow. Well, Ethan Winters. Miles. You escaped my little brother's idiot games, did you? Let's see how special you are.
I'm sorry, but that ain't threatening me. It also doesn't help that Big Bitch is dumb as fuck. There's a moment where she has Ethan dead to rights and she very clearly wants to kill him. She even says seconds later that I'm going to kill you. She says this after she has him dead to rights and then breaks the floor under you and then lets you drop. And then yells out that she wants to kill us. You had him dead to rights and you didn't kill him.
What the fuck?
It actually pisses me off when movies or games like this have a character dead to rights and they let them go through stupidity or just random bullshit and then state that they want to kill them. You had them in your grip. You should have killed them. Resident Evil 3 pulled this exact same bullshit, which is even worse there because the Nemesis is actually programmed to kill you. And Big Bitch isn't the only one who fucking does this either. Heisenberg is just as dumb. He even has him in his hand and states that he wants to kill him and then lets him go in his stupid factory. Which, in my opinion, is the worst part of this game. This factory is long and boring. Most of the time in this factory, I didn't care about anything. Most of the bad guys or the villains that came after me, like most of these cyborg creatures that started coming after me, I didn't care about. They didn't fill me with dread, they just filled me with, oh, for fuck's sake, just get out of the way. And that is also due in part to the fact that I was literally showered in ammo. I had so much ammo in this section. I never once felt like I was going to run out of ammo. Even when these creatures started taking more damage, I still never felt like I was going to run out of ammo. They just costed a little bit more. I had hundreds of bullets, hundreds of shotgun shells, and hundreds of sniper rifle ammo. Not once was I ever afraid that I was going to run out of ammo thanks to anything in this game. I kind of felt like it was trying to lull me into a false sense of security, and at a point it was just gonna shower me in enemies that I had to kill, which it kind of did, but it didn't drain that much ammo. I had too much ammo at that point anyway. The best thing about Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 7 is that it forced you to play conservatively. There was not enough ammo to go around. And particularly in Resident Evil 2, you did not want to start firing off ammo anywhere, particularly if there was a licker around. The Tyrant is a massive waste of time, because if you put ammo into him, he'll get back up anyway. But there's no such consideration in this game. At first, Big Bitch is chasing you, but when you manage to kill her in the most Skyrim-like boss battle that I think I've ever played in one of these games, there's nothing chasing you, and it really doesn't feel like there's anything forcing you to continue, apart from the fact that you're stuck in this area. And the whole plot about finding his daughter wasn't the most compelling thing anyway. Ethan, the main protagonist of this game, he's too annoying. He is just straight up bad.
Why the fuck is this happening again? Shit!
Ethan spends far too much time in this game cracking jokes, even at crucial moments when he should be afraid. He's cracking jokes like he's Deadpool. When you come face to face with Heisenberg, someone who could literally rip you apart in seconds, who was literally in this very scene, throwing a knife without even touching it, and Ethan is cracking a joke at him. This man could cut you apart with that knife in a thought, and you are cracking a joke. This only does two things. One, it makes the situation feel less like a situation and more like a casual day at the job. And two, it detracts from the villains themselves. If the protagonist is cracking jokes right to the antagonist's face, then even the game isn't taking them seriously. Resident Evil 7 hit the goldmine when it came to its antagonists. The Baker family were basically just the family from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, except we had to deal with them. It virtually played every note in the book to make them intimidating. They were unpredictable and completely out of their minds. Their first introduction literally has Jack sawing off Lucas's arm, and he reacts like it's just a regular occurrence. And even Jack tries to force feed you grubs and then starts cutting into your face. What's more is that when you do escape, and Jack actually starts pursuing you, he's breaking through walls, grabbing you from behind, and if you let him, he'll cut your fucking leg off. The game was smart in how it portrayed its antagonists. They made the audience genuinely afraid, because if they caught up to you, you didn't want to know what they were going to do with you. But this game doesn't even have the audacity to portray competent villains. Not only are they dumb as fuck for not killing you when they have the chance, but the game actively makes you want to laugh at them. And don't even get me started on what the fuck this thing is meant to be. But the main antagonist of this game, Mother Miranda, an antagonist that gets introduced and then disappears for 90% of the game, and then dumps a bunch of notes in one room to explain her backstory, and then we kill her. We don't even have enough time to soak in the information before we kill her. The main antagonist of this game isn't a focused point of this game. Now, it's not uncommon for these Resident Evil games to throw the backstory of the main villain into the backlog of the game, but they're usually smart about how they do it. Resident Evil 2 is the best example of this. We spend an entire section learning about William Birkin. We spend an entire section learning that he created the T-Virus, and that Umbrella decided to take over the T-Virus, and then forcing him to try and run, and in the process, they infect the entire city with the virus, causing a citywide pandemic. And that's not to mention that he takes the rest of the virus and injects himself with it, and becomes a monster himself. It changed the perspective on this guy. He was, as far as we were concerned, he was just a monster that was chasing us and trying to kill us. But then when we hit this section, we learn about his character. We learn the tragedy of it all. And it's a neat little premise, and it's intriguing because it deals with relevant topics like corporate greed, which makes it all the more terrifying because it borders on reality. It is almost terrifyingly real. Which is why when I first watched the trailer for this game, it looked like they were adding werewolves and vampires into it, which I wasn't entirely against, like if it had some kind of logical explanation, like some science experiment gone wrong. But instead, Mother Miranda apparently found some kind of magical mold that overwhelmed her mind with knowledge.
Ooh, aren't you scary?
This is a major drawback for the game for me, because the mystical element in this game really isn't well explored, nor does it make any kind of sense, particularly in a series that's all about body horror and science experiments gone wrong. The almost realistic nature of Resident Evil is what drew me into it in the first place, but when you start including magic, I just start to lose interest. It's why movies like The Conjuring never terrify me, because despite the disclaimer of the movie, they ain't fucking real. And that really detracts from Mother Miranda herself, because Mother Miranda isn't all that interesting. She doesn't have anything latching anyone onto her. Her design is boring as shit. It's really not that interesting. Big Bitch was more interesting than this chick. Her character just isn't well fleshed out at all. And they could have done so much more with her character. And in hindsight, this game. But in the end, those are just my thoughts on this game. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. If you like what you see here and you want to see more, click that subscribe button, hit the like button, and I'll see you guys next time.